Yeah.
Good.
If the light goes off, please contact Mikey at Mikey Boni's brother at
gmail.com and send your telephone number so that he can pay for the disruption.
Yes.
Mkoaje lakini? Mko BA, watu wanazeeka tu. Kipara inaendelea tu kuparara.
Hebu mwambie kipara yako haijaparara sure.
No, kuparara I didn't mean kuparara hivyo. Kipara inapara as in
it is the kipara is
extending. Yes.
It's kiparaing.
Yes, it is extending.
Salama, I actually had a very good trip. Really enjoyed myself. I landed there and the next day I felt like I had taken the best trip a man can take. Yani I felt like a load had been lifted. That's when I knew Kenya is stressful. Where?
Kusha. Yani your holiday came in March instead of December just by a trip. And it was not even a holiday, you were going to work.
Yes, and I was at work and I was happy. Like that's
how much stress it is.
Yes, that's how.
Okay. Sasa, ulianzisha maneno last week. I will allow you to finish.
No, ask the question.
Before we get there,
yes,
I have. When we were beginning last time, I mentioned something about awareness.
Yes.
And I still, more questions. So awareness being the mental recognition of a thing. It's a thing that keeps running on my mind because awareness is not knowledge.
Yes.
It's not knowledge alone.
Yeah.
It defines attitude, it defines how you see life, it defines outlook. And even as you're discussing the gospel, the secular, and the holy, awareness, I think, factors into this over and above having had knowledge of the definitions we talk about and the expectations that God has. I have a story I had about some kid who in school he always went to school and at lunchtime we went to wherever the meal place is with a tray, was given food and walked away. For him that was normal. It never occurred to him whether they are rich or poor. It was normal life until one day the person who serves food at the school mess changed and the new one doesn't know the rules. So the kid goes as usual to wait for food kawaida and he was asked for money and he's like, he's never paid before. He's like, what do you mean asking for money?
Yeah.
So because that was that person's first day, before that was sorted out, kasha kiasi, eventually it was sorted out and he was given his lunch. But something changed in him. He realized we are broke because his lunch is paid for by the school, but there are other kids who pay for their lunch out of pocket.
Yes.
All right? And instantly he felt poorer. And he was about 8-9 years old.
Yes.
And now that changed how he saw life in everything else from that point.
Yes.
There's a thing about having an awareness of the things you discover, which sometimes I think is lost to us. Sometimes we think because I have information, then I'm fine. And I think this awareness comes at the level of revelation that the enlightenment is more than information. It opens a new facet or a new outlook into life. So as you're discussing the gospel, the secular, and the holy, plug in the awareness of that, how an outlook changes once you discover these things we are discussing.
You know, it's actually a good thing that you bring that up, because one of the things that I have been struggling with for a while is the fact that as a team, as a family, we have a lot of information.
Yes.
But there is action, but the action is not commensurate to the information.
Okay.
So, for example, have you ever met those guys with a PhD, but they are dumb?
Yes, I get what you mean. Yes.
Right? It's a very frustrating interaction because your expectation is that the vastness of their knowledge
Yes.
should then bear the fruit of an improved life.
Yes.
So, for example, one of the things that I completely struggle with in this country, and you will notice it now that I say it, we live in a country where if you're dumb and a thug, you're more likely to succeed than when you're smart and you're not.
Yes.
Tumesha link.
Link washatuma.
You get. So, when you live in a country where someone who behaves the way Sonko does has done more than a leader who you can respect,
Yes.
you begin to live in a place where you keep asking God, what is this righteousness for?
Yes.
Similarly, when you get into a place where God is expanding your knowledge and you can't see the fruit of your knowledge, then you end up in a worse place. That worse place being, you can't go back to what you used to know.
Because you know better.
Because you know better. But what you know is not helping your life.
Yes.
It's the quandary of school, actually. It's part of the problems I had with 844 system. They would teach you budgeting. So, how to do a budget. Do your income, do your expenditure, you draw it. But you're doing this in class 6 and you had no money.
Yes.
You get? Because I remember how I grew up to be given 5 bob was a miracle.
Yes.
And even that 5 bob was buying one thing.
Yes.
So what are you budgeting?
So
You
the information you're being given is irrelevant to your circumstance.
Yes. So when we grew up, a lot of us don't budget.
Yes.
You wait for money, then you look at your problems, then you're like, okay, this money can address half, 3/4, all, solve, move on.
Yes.
So similarly, there is a need to understand why our faith is intrinsically linked to an increase in knowledge. One of the things that Jesus kept saying is, I have much to tell you.
Yes.
I have much to tell you. It's interesting that if you were to take life from the perspective of how many Christians have sold it, where are you living a righteous life? Then you should be fine. Yet Jesus first never asked his disciples whether they're living a righteous life.
Yes.
We just assume they were.
Yeah.
But there's no talk of that. But Jesus kept saying, I have much to tell you. And he kept teaching them, and he kept giving parables, and he kept explaining the parables, and he kept teaching. Like the entirety of the Gospels, you can take it as 2 ways. You can take it as the story of Jesus, or you can take it as a list of things that Jesus taught.
Yes.
Right? In fact, Jesus went ahead to say, keep my commandments.
Yes.
And people always read that and think that the commandments of Moses, they're not. They're Jesus' commandments. You know, or if you look to a woman to lust after her, then you've already committed adultery with her in your heart. Is a Jesus commandment. So anyway, you take all that, then take it into how we live life. So let me ask you a question. How many secular things have you done today? How many gospel things have you done today? You see, it should be a simple question. Because it's like being asked, how many bottles of water have you drunk?
I'm on my fast.
You get? But when I pose the question, how many secular things have you done? And how many gospel things have you done? Then suddenly you're like, wait.
So, in fact, generally, when you ask that question, majority of people's minds go to, I can't answer that question because I'm not a pastor, preacher, evangelist, and assume
Yes.
that those guys do gospel things.
Yes.
And then they say, if I am not those, then all I do is secular.
Yeah. So here's the problem. Where did you get the idea that the opposite of gospel is secular?
It all came from music, to be honest.
Right? Because what is secular, in fact, you are good at looking at definitions.
That's
Please
actually where
define
I'm
secular
headed.
for us.
That is exactly, it's like you're reading my mind. I was like, I have never checked the etymology of secular.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I usually do two things. So number one, meaning of...
Tumepotea
Tumepotea?
live.
Are you for serious? Waiting for signal. Your internet yenyu ni fake. Waiting for signal. It should resume shortly. Uleka active? In fact, generally when news that I'm not
Wait,
close,
I
then all
am
do
dark
is-
today.
Yeah.
So here's the problem. The video is dark. Look at the lighting. Like I'm fading into the darkness behind me. Lighting.
Oh, light. Yeah. I'm at a setting. Okay. Kuna?
This one is fine. It is this one. Ebu, switch to this camera. Switch.
Oh, wewe utaona. Ama yako iko more live. Oh yeah, because you're using your Facebook, eh? Hey. So are we being heard or not being heard?
By the way, that's a good question. Yeah. See,
Oh, we're back, eh?
see her.
Hey, enye giza bwana.
We?
Alafu ukaamua kuvaa white. Well, see white. So are we being heard or not being heard? So we're being heard.
Yeah. Put this camera, we continue as lights are dealt with.
So,
Uh-huh.
the meaning of secular in Google, adjective, not connected with religious or spiritual matters.
Not connected with?
Religious or spiritual matters.
Aha.
Even first meaning. The
Yes.
second one, because now I guess these things developed by use, it actually starts Christian church of clergy not subject to or bound by religious rule, not belonging to or living in a monastic or other order.
Okay.
That's,
Living in a monastic or other order.
yes.
The other one is not related to religion.
Religia, yes.
Okay.
But I like going through something called etymology.
Yes, so you find the root of the word.
Etymology of secular. This is from pro-Italic site law. Living in the world, not belonging to a religious order, also generally belonging to the state, as opposed to the church. From Old French, secular, yes, so that's where it comes from.
Okay.
Worldly, secular, pertaining to a generation or age.
So we decided that, so this bottle is secular.
Because it is not relating to a religion.
Question. The earth is the Lord's?
And the fullness thereof.
So everything belongs to God, but not everything belongs to religion. Right?
Is the mountain a religious one?
You get? Because Mount Kenya, good question, is it secular or gospel?
So if you're a Kikuyu, it is gospel. Where gospel?
But you see the difficulty. Because when they told it to you, they told it to you the way they told you the opposite of white is black. Right? They did not tell you that there is no distinction in the Bible between the secular and the gospel. So, now this is important because the distinction that the Bible does draw is the difference between the common and the holy. That question is very important to understand. Now, to your point has. Much of the time, the only time the distinction between secular and gospel is made in many church circles is when it comes to music.
Yes.
So people will ask, rather foolishly, can you listen to secular music? Question, can you have a secular conversation?
They don't think that way.
Because the difference cannot be a bit. So if I ask you a question, what did you put on your hair today?
Secular music
You need
umeanza
secular,
kwa hii miti.
right? But if I ask, what did you do to your hair today? It's not secular.
No. In fact, so for me, part of the to add to your point,
Yes.
one of the things that used to bug me when this secular conversation used to happen,
Yeah.
is we had a problem with Mikey, the secular music singer, with his songs,
Yes.
but not a problem with his movies.
Yes.
So I was like, hold up.
Yeah. But we used to play Jim Reeves all the time.
Oh, that too.
And he had a gospel album, which was a Christmas album.
Yes.
I don't know how Jingle Bells is gospel.
Yes.
But
True.
Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle.
That has got nothing to do
Oh,
with
what fun it is to ride.
the gospel.
Yes. It's not gospel.
Well, although it's gospel to the extent that it's good news that we are celebrating. Not celebrating Christ.
Yeah, but that's
It's
the
good
point.
news.
You get. So,
Ruining childhood, eh?
ruining your childhood. So what happens is when you have that dichotomy in your head, you reduce the question of holiness to some petty issues that don't make sense. Right? So now you will say, my car is a holy car. It only plays gospel music. Never mind that music includes lines like shoot Satan. Shoot Satan. Pa.
Yeah.
Fide.
Me
Right?
nilikwambia, us guys used to rush for gospel matatus.
Yes. Right?
The matatus that allowed us to play gospel music.
Yes.
It is a gospel matatu. Hizi
Yes.
zingine ni secular.
Yeah. Inatumia mafuta ilikuwa gospel.
Mimi sijui. Ilikuwa inacheza ngoma ya church.
Were the seats gospel?
Hey, hiyo maswali unauliza ni mbaya bwana.
So basically, it's just the sound you
The-
hear.
the
If
sound-
it has a beat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have another story, but I'll tell you later.
If it's funny, say it now.
Okay, sawa.
Eh.
You know the other day you raised the issue about miracles, and the way people follow miracles.
Yes.
There is a story a friend of mine tells us that kuna dem mazee zilikuwa zimemshika, ameingia matatu inacheza whatever rap music it was.
Yes.
He's like, I cannot take this anymore. Akashika matatu akaomba, ngoma ikazima. So kuna God sasa.
There was a problem with the wiring.
So you see such stories now entrenches the whole idea
Let me ask a
that
question.
secular music is bad.
Let me just ask one question. Whenever a miracle happens, and they do happen, why doesn't anyone ever ask, so what?
Sasa in this case, yeye alishika matatu hivi.
Sasa, if the problem is secular music in matatus, her prayer should have switched off all secular music worldwide.
So that there is benefit. Benefit was personal.
Anyway, do you know where this secular music versus gospel music comes from? Comes from the idea that many preachers taught that somehow Lucifer, who they decided was the devil, was
Yes.
in charge of music. Okay? Then they jump and find a scripture that says God inhabits the praises of their people, his people.
Yes.
Then they assumed praises is singing. As though you can't just say, you can't praise God and say you're awesome, God, without music. Right?
And I actually found
Uh-huh.
the actual wording
Uh,
that got them there.
yes.
So when we read Ezekiel 28 in AMPC,
Yes.
there are some words it doesn't include.
Yes.
Verse 13 says, thou hast been in Eden. So I'm reading KJV.
Yes.
Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. Then mentions all the stones.
Yes.
Carbuncle and gold.
Yes.
The workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes
Yes.
was prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Tabrets and pipes
Yeah.
are musical instruments.
So
So
now-
when I read that, I was like, aha.
You see? No wonder the Amplified removes it. So here's how it works. So they took that.
Yes.
First they took Lucifer, made him Satan.
Yes.
Then they took that and they said he was made. Even though it says you were in Eden. Right?
Yeah.
And we know to date the devil is in heaven. How we know this? We say all the time, we battle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities.
And
Where?
rulers in heavenly places.
Exactly. So we know he is not on earth. We know that his abode is not on earth because in Revelation he's sent down from heaven to earth. Tuko sawa? So it is not possible that he was in Eden, then he ascended. Can we agree?
Yes.
So now what happens is they took that, then they took God inhabits the praises of his people, decided that is a song as well, and then David playing guitar for soul, playing the harp
Yes.
for soul. The demon left. They decided that music now is a gateway to the spiritual realm. So much so that even some of us listening to me still believe that if you want to pray,
You must
you must sing,
a slow song
yes,
when you get there.
to invite the presence of God.
Yes.
Si kuna kaukweli hapo.
Kuna watu wanafanya.
Right? It depends. You see, the problem is this. When music was amplified to be a gateway, right? And then there was the moral panic of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. These moral panics were about American evangelical mothers saying that their kids were being destroyed by rock and roll,
Ah.
then video games, then hip hop, then Gothism.
Gothism,
Goth-
black.
yes. So there was a proper panic. Now, I don't know whether you watched this video. It was called The Truth About Hip Hop.
When I watched it, I've heard of it, but when I watched it.
Ian, you've watched it. And you've seen the amount of panic they put in it. From the signs they put up, the fingers, that hip hop means hips hopping, you know.
Hips hopping.
Yeah, the sagging of trousers is gayism, you know.
Really? When I found out about the sagging, I was like, really, guys? Yeah. You know the origins of sagging?
That's a stretch.
Huh?
Do you know what the origins of sagging trousers is?
No.
Prison.
Yeah.
In prison,
You
they
do-
can't be given belts.
Yeah.
And you have to be given a trouser that will generally fit.
Yes.
So trousers were always sagging.
Yes.
So it became a culture in there.
Yeah.
And then see, rap is associated with
Thugs.
criminality and
Yes,
thugs.
yeah.
So when they came out, they were like, yeah,
Yeah.
saga our pants.
Yeah.
Gayism imetoka wapi?
See, now that's the point. See, they're in prison, they will,
They became gay.
yeah. So, point being that the moral panic of the 80s, 90s created within the evangelical community a focus on music as a spiritual gateway. So you will hear many people say all the time that music is a gateway. Then they say the gate to your spirit, you've got ear gate, eye gate, mouth gate. I think, yeah, sorry, I've forgotten my Kuriakos theology. So they say your ears are a gateway to spirituality, right? So basically, if you listen to a song that is secular, you are opening a gateway to whichever spirits
That person
that person carried.
carries or bears.
Now, make it worse, add the conspiracy theories of backmasking,
Yes,
right?
I remember that.
That now people have recorded songs, and if you listen, it is written, it says Doxinatas.
I remember that.
Satan is God.
Yes.
Right? So if you listen to that backwards, it's affecting your spirit. Right? Now, this was so crazy that people actually thought, especially the rock and roll one, that their kids were being possessed and becoming devil worshippers because of listening to music. Right? Basically saying then that the way people go to the club, alafu naambia weka mikono juu. Now you're worshipping whichever God this person worships who made the music.
If you sing along,
right?
or you listen to the music.
I'm sure some of you have heard these theories before. Now,
No, since what happened when Kunadawa was being sung in bars,
no, but you see, kucheza kuna dawa kwa bar was a big issue again, because some people are arguing now we are evangelizing the bars, and others were saying gospel music should not be. So now, please understand that the majority of these things are things that many Christians still carry. At the back of your mind, because of the amount of indoctrination that you have, when I mention it, you're like, what's going on? So for example, if I played an Eminem song, can you pray?
What do you mean, can you pray? See, you're praying while listening.
You see, you can.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm not. I am not the target audience.
Yes.
I am sorry. But I get your question.
Because for many people, they don't go out on Saturday because they're preparing for Sunday.
Yes.
But they'll go out on Friday.
Because there's a 24-hour gap.
Because
in fact, using the other argument before, if to pray you need a slow song to bring the presence of the Lord.
Yes.
If you play Eminem before you pray,
yes,
whose presence are you bringing is the question they
exactly
ask.
You get. Now, all of this thinking makes you focus on your religious life, your relationship with God, into special times. And it is a robbery. Because what that secular conversation forces you to do is to separate your life into things you do for God and things you do for you doing or for fun or whatever, right? So what happens is when you're watching a movie, you're doing a secular thing. So now God is not necessarily present.
Yes,
right?
He's present. Do I wonder how they deal with? Does he care?
Yes. So now you deal with. So you play Tupac's Ghetto Gospel, right? Which is one of my favorite songs. You can't pray because you are bringing God into an environment that He is not. So the other thing that you do, other than segregating your life into gospel activities and secular activities, you also segregate your relationship with God. Because now you need to bring Him. So much so that you don't realize that most of the time you say, let us bow our heads and pray. You are saying that because you are saying my posture is not a posture of prayer. So I need to move from where I am into this place called prayer.
Another funny story. When I was in high school, some young zealous kid.
Yes.
Because I remember he was younger than me, probably from 1, maybe from 3 or 2, 4, something like that. CU meeting. Now, this is Pharisee has, religious has.
Yes.
Kid comes and says, some of you are even very disrespectful. You cannot pocket in front of a prefect.
Yes.
But in prayer meeting, you're pocketing. Even me was like, hapana, hata kama mimi ni. What are you saying?
But,
I mean, really?
yeah. But it's because, you see, please understand, that secular gospel dichotomy, at the end of the day, will always create separation between you and God.
Always.
Whether you do it consciously or subconsciously. Because Jesus never ever said once, let us bow our heads and pray. In fact, most of the prayers recorded in the Bible, it says, and someone cried out to God. The Bible does not have any instruction about which posture you need to have when you're praying. Bible does not say, Jesus did not say, when you pray, kneel down. When you pray, lie prostrate. When you're being anointed, cry.
Close your eyes.
Or remove your fear.
Or remove
Yeah,
your heart.
have no heart.
All of those things stem from the fact that you have removed God from everything in your life and put him in a special day, special moment, special whatever. I remember that whenever people used to come to our house to pray, not to pray, usually they've come to visit, and I'm sorry to say this, they are mostly women. Then they've had tea, they've talked, they whatever. Then they need to pray to leave. Pambio.
Yeah.
You're wondering, what is the relationship between praying
And the song.
and the song? But it's because the presence of God is not omnipresent. Right? God is present for you in the shape and form where he comes down. And therefore, we ended up creating people called worship leaders, who in their practice think they're leading you to worship because, one, what do they say? Oh, let us invite the presence of God. Just start praying in tongues.
Invite the presence of God from where?
Exactly. From where? What?
So,
Wait, so if God was to go to a place, okay, you are God, all powerful, all knowing.
omnipresent. That's what I was going to
No,
ask.
before omnipresent.
Okay, sorry.
You are God. Let's say you decided there's a little part of the universe you're going to withdraw your presence from. Let's assume. So, then the requirement for you to come
Is for me to sing a song.
yes.
So, ngoma tu ndo nimekosa. Mika God.
Yes. So essentially, therefore, according to that logic, if you sing gospel songs 24 hours, that's when God will be with you all the time.
Yes.
All right. So question: when did Jesus sing?
Dun, 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 dun.
There's also the guilting people as well during worship, where they say, like what I've been hearing a lot of, when you go to the football games, this is an American preacher, when you go to the football games,
Yes.
you have no whatever, standing up and
Shouting, yes.
But when it comes to
To God.
When it
You're
comes
not
to worship,
shouting.
I
When-
was like, don't
That-
guilt
no.
me.
your hands are not in the air, your hands are down.
Yes.
Your voice is soft, you don't shout for the Lord.
Yeah.
Women shout for the Lord. Yeah. Men shout for the Lord. Oh, yeah, that's what the Lord
That's not
deserves
a
better.
better shout.
Question.
Kuchoka naye.
Question. God's presence can be reduced to that. And if you have to invite him in, how have you been living?
Si unaona sasa kwa nini tulikuwa tunaitangwa
You get?
rebellious.
So now, in the mix of all that, you create a pinnacle of your experience with God. So that now, God cannot be experienced the same way in your private home as he will be experienced in church. Now, there a foreign preacher come. Now God has really visited. Visited. You can be in your normal brains and say God is visiting.
God has visited Kenya.
God is visiting.
Kabla uga come,
Where has he been?
amnaga.
So in Easy Church, let's assume God comes to your church as your worship leader, says he comes every Sunday. So you want to tell me God will sound naughty, but I like it. Comes a little when it's local preachers, then he comes a lot
When it's a
when it's
foreigner
Benin.
preacher. And when they are two, even more. It's been 13.
Prepare for a visitation. Again, telling you that God is so distant that you need to prepare for him to visit. And he's not going to visit. If the preacher is coming on the 12th, between now and when you're preparing for the 12th, he will not come. How?
Last thing he goes with them.
Yes. He goes with them. He goes with them.
Well, the visit is over.
Yeah.
A visitor doesn't.
Visited.
Yes. Because come it was not a visitation, it was a shiftation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Amehama kwako because
We are doomed.
So like the way you are saying that is it's triggering the scripture. So it says when Elijah was talking to the Baal prophets at Mount Carmel,
yes.
it says you can shout louder.
Yeah, but that's what we do.
Yes.
The church has become,
the
listen,
prophets of Baal.
listen. In fact, the prophets of Baal versus Elijah is a perfect example. The prophets of Baal, they played songs, they cried, they cut themselves, they did everything. They fasted to bring fire down.
To get a response.
Elijah, the entire time, was laughing at them. That was his worship song.
Yes. His prep.
The entire time, he was making fun of them.
Ako kwacho. See there's a phrase like that.
Yeah, he said, your God must be in the toilet.
Ako kwacho. Abu ama mlala.
So now, that kind of worship is not our God's worship.
True.
It's not. So, the idea that secular is music and secular is something you do, and then secular is antithetical to God is a lie. It is a lie. Now, I don't mean there is no use for musical instruments, because there was a time someone went to see Elisha, and Elisha said, give me a minstrel, an instrument. And he played the instrument and he was able to prophesy. Okay? That does not mean every time he prophesied, he used the
Required
minstrel.
the minstrel.
And it is not something he learned even from Elijah. Because the spirit of a prophet is subject to
The prophet.
the prophet.
And neither did he say, shall you do this thing
Yes.
going forward?
Okay? So what I needed to do before I teach what I need to teach, can you imagine that introduction? I need you in your mind to delete the word secular. It does not exist. In as far as the truth of the Bible is concerned, it does not exist. The reason it does not exist, haven't you fully been bought for a price? Aren't you supposed to be a living sacrifice? Meaning that it is not the thing that you are doing that makes you righteous or unrighteous. It is who you are that cleans the unclean thing. In the Old Testament, what used to happen is if I touched an unclean person, someone with leprosy, I would be unclean for X amount of days. I have to go see the priest, etc. In the New Testament, Jesus was clean, touched the unclean and made it clean. As though Akina Peter did not understand that message enough, God lowers a sheet full of all kinds of animals that are unclean. God tells Peter,
Eat. Kill and eat.
Then Peter says, since my youth, I have never eaten such things.
I have never been secular.
God told him, what I have made clean, you shall no longer call
Unclean.
The uncleanness that remains is you. It is not things.
Burudia hiyo.
The uncleanness that remains is you, it is not things. Because Paul says, if you eat meat sacrificed to idols with thanksgiving, you're fine. After all, what are idols? They don't exist, they're not real things. So, but he says, if you are of little faith, then don't eat. So where is the problem? Little faith
Or the
or
meat.
the meat?
Little
It is
faith.
little faith. And who is in charge of their faith?
The faith.
The faither.
The faith carrier.
Yes,
The
the
faither.
faither. The faithful. You get? At the end of the day, when Christ came, the question of secular versus gospel died. And Paul says, all of creation puts on display the works of God. Then he continued to say, to the pure, all things are pure. The impurity you find it because of your impurity, not because of the thing.
What you see is what you are.
Yes.
You see the world the way you are.
You find impurity in the thing you find impure. I'll give you an example. You will notice as kids, there were songs we used to sing that as adults we consider dirty. A la 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 long, a la 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 long, the long, 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 right? Oh yeah, right? We sang those songs. To us, it was a nice song to sing.
And dance to
Right? The impurity came not the day you had sex, the day your idea of sex was impure.
Exactly.
Bring pish. You see, Paul says on many occasions that you will be judged according to your conscience. Many people work so hard not to do things, and you fail. The thing you need to change is your conscience. So, for example, if my conscience convicts me about eating meat sacrificed to idols, what do I need to change? My conscience. Then I can eat and I'll be okay. I don't mind whether it is halal or not.
Halal. Oh.
Yeah. So, for example, today when I was coming, I was thinking, if Christians found out we meet in a Muslim center,
Kwisha. Now they have found out.
now they have found out.
Iko shida.
You get? You see, instead of putting God in special places, you need to put God everywhere. And if you put God everywhere, then you understand that God's relationship with darkness is that darkness can never stand it. So if you're full of light, you're not afraid of that which they dub secular.
Or unclean.
You get? So I used to ride with Bonnie, and we just met maybe 3, 4, 5 months after we met. So just started hanging out. So Bonnie loves hip hop. So we're playing hip hop. We've driven, we've gone to where we've come back. We're somewhere in South B, I think it was. Then a certain hip hop song played, I started praying in tongues. This was Bonnie. Like, dude, tumesikiza hip hop 3 hours. How?
What is the connection?
When you carry light, you find light everywhere. Paul went into a temple first. Went into a temple, not God's temple, a temple that had idols.
Idols.
While he was there, first and foremost, many of you Christians, even going to a Hindu temple, you can't. Can't go to a mosque. Paul went to a temple and was there long enough to identify all their gods. And then go and preach the weirdest sermon I've ever heard.
Hey, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Ati,
Ati,
I have seen among your gods, there's one called
the unknown God.
I have come to introduce him.
And the day I read that, I was just like, dude.
So let's assume that yes, that music album is demonic. Are you like Paul to find the one unknown God? Do you carry that much light? And the only way you can carry that much light is if God is present in you all the time. So that everything you do is sanctified. Now let me touch on holiness. I said everything you do is
Sanctified.
Now, the requirement of holiness has never been taken away. The problem is how we understand holiness. We decided holiness equals sinlessness. That's not true. Holiness, first meeting, is set apart, first meaning, set apart for a special purpose. Correct? Meaning that if you are not set apart for a purpose, you are not holy. You cannot claim it. So, now, the things that were set apart in the temple, did they used to get dirty?
Yes, kuna dust.
Kuna dust.
Kuna
there was
in the
blood.
desert.
Not only in the
Yeah.
desert. They were slaughtering all manner of things all the time.
Exactly.
Right? So holiness does not mean the utensil does not get dirty. But it means set apart. And like we read last week in Numbers and in Ezekiel 44, Numbers 11 or 11:10, you must learn to distinguish between the holy and the common. If what I do is common, I am not holy. If what I do is kawaida, I am not holy. If I live a life that is common, I am not holy. Now, many people have decided that the way that we live a holy life is like the monks live. So it's a different degree of monkship.
Monastic order.
Yes, where you go and hide yourself from the world and you say, I will not hear, I will not speak, I will fast a lot so that I am being holy. And they think by physically isolating themselves, they are being set apart. No. You cannot be holy and not useful. Because it says set apart for a special purpose.
Special use.
So you cannot withdraw yourself from the world and say you are being holy. Jesus himself said, behold, I'm sending you as sheep among wolves. If you find yourself as a sheep among sheep, you are disobedient to God. Can I rewind? I've sent you as sheep among
Wolves.
When you find yourself only among sheep, what should that tell you?
You're not where you were sent.
The very place you were sent to, very place you were sent to, is the place people call secular. Agnes, my babe. Yeah. Okay. Am I making sense? First, you cannot be holy and do nothing. The place where holiness has been sent is to the world.
To the so-called secular.
Because Paul, and many people misquote him, he did say, avoid certain people. He said, avoid people who claim to be brethren, but are like this, the liars, the backbiters, the whatever. But very next verse he says, but you cannot separate yourself from the world. Because Jesus' instruction is for us to be sheep among wolves. So what then is holiness? Holiness is this: that when the wolf does wolf things, the sheep does sheep things, and that sheep thing is holiness. Meaning, there are two definitions of common, right? Definition of common is patterns of this world. So, if people are overlapping illegally, because in this country cops can tell you to overlap legally, and you overlap
illegally with them,
you are doing what is common, you are being unholy. So, if you go to work and you only work 8 to 1, 2 to 5, you are doing that which is common. You are unholy. Because your God requires of you that if someone forces you to walk a mile, what do?
walk to.
So, if you do what is expected of you, what did Jesus say? You have no reward. Yeah. Didn't he say, if you give, expecting back, like the world does?
Same what's up.
Yeah. Am I making sense? The moment you find yourself acting in your relationship, in your forgiveness, in your finances, in your generosity, in your way of doing things, that you choose not to do the distinguished thing, not to do the thing that goes above and beyond, not to do the thing that is excellent, you are acting in a manner that is unholy. Because the true distinction that a Christian needs to give himself is not the distinction between the secular and the gospel now. It is between the holy and the unholy. And the common. So question, same question I asked at the beginning, I asked last week, let me ask again. Is your life common or is it holy? When we come to your house and we see how you've arranged it, is it common? Is it holy? You know a holy house? unaingianga, unasikia paka utoe ngozi yako ndio upate place ya kukaa. You don't mess things up, right? That is a house that has been set apart for holy use. You get? So holiness is the mentality that I am going to do everything in my life with distinction. That I'm going to do things that people are going to check and say, this is a Hebrew. Because the term Hebrew means he walks strange. He came from a strange place, has strange behaviors. That's why they called Abraham the Hebrew. But if you find yourself doing the common, that is what is called unholiness. You cannot separate holiness from that which you do. So if you've been hired to clean a house, how you clean that house will determine your holiness. If you teach, what is the quality of your teaching? Now, biggest problem with how we live in the world and what even doing exams taught us is kuna pass mark. Right?
Bora nimefika hapa, bora uhai.
Yes. Problem with pass mark is that is what is called common. God expects of us distinction.
Bora uhai ni common.
Instead of asking what is gospel, what is secular, turn everything in your life gospel. Then focus. You see, let me tell you, I watch movies and I hear someone. I watch shows, hear someone. Listen to hip hop, hear God. Same way I can listen to a watchman, a cook, a prostitute, and hear God. Because this God we serve literally says he will make rocks sing. And if you've researched rocks enough, you would know you can cut a rock and look at the beauty of that rock and say, yeah, there's a God. So they do sing. If you find it hard to find God everywhere, you have the wrong duality in your head. Because David literally says, if I make my bed in hell, in Sheol, place of the dead, there your hand shall find me also. You need to take God out of the mountain, out of the valleys, and make his road plain. Because God says, for you to make way, you know, people say, make way for the coming of the Lord. He says, remove the mountains, remove the valleys. The mountains are places of worship. Stop having places of worship. The valley is the valley of death. You know it when you cry out to God the most because you're scared. You should not have mountain experiences with God and valley experiences with God. God needs to speak with you level. It means everywhere. Stop having peaks in your life. Because we all know how your prayer life is when you're in trouble. And how you like the mountain prayer life. No. Make straight the ways of the Lord, so that the Lord of glory may come in. Remove that gauge. It is not a real gauge. It's not a gauge Jesus had. When Jesus was reclining at the table, was it being secular or gospel?
Those grapes, man.
Yeah?
Those grapes.
When he turned water into wine,
Yes.
was it gospel or secular?
Hizo grapes walikuwa wameona ziko fiti.
Huh? No, think about it. When he asked,
Hizo mabashi zote alienda.
yes, when he asked the tax collector, saying, today I'll dine at your house, did he say, is it a secular
A gospel
or a gospel meal? Those things don't exist. Remove them from your head. But instead, bring into your mind what is the quality of the purpose, the work I'm set apart to do. When we see your work, you're a Swahili teacher like Titus. Do we see set apart work? Do we see distinction? Or is it just common? When we leave, do we just look for the next Swahili teacher? Or is there a gap? In your life, do you have a distinction between common and holy? Are you a common person? Are you holy? It says, I choose to be holy, set apart for you, my master, ready to do your will. See how it goes. But who chooses to be holy?
I.
You have to make that choice that I am going to serve and do what God has asked me to do with distinction. So that the wolves around me will say, you know what, I want to be a sheep too. That's how we become living letters. So, to answer the question of awareness, everything that God has made you aware about, how you should forgive, how you should love, how you should work, how you should do all of those things, how set apart have you set those things? Are they important to you to hear? That it's set apart. Things and the work we do and ourselves become holy when we set them apart, set them different for special purposes. We hold them in high esteem, hold them in high regard. Do you see? So, in so doing, you realize that you no longer need to be in charge, in quotes, to experience a holy experience. That now, everything you do is holy. I want to read a scripture for you. That's not what I'm looking for. We just find it one sec. Deuteronomy 14:2. You have been set apart as holy to the Lord your God. And he has chosen you from all the nations to be what? His own special people. Question. How special are you? Let me tell you a story as I close. I was in Tanzania. There's a friend of mine I had not seen in a while. So like 2 days later, I'm at this big meeting. Then I see him walking in. Then there's a way he's walking. He had a certain swag in him. I hadn't seen him in a while. And I knew he had been promoted. There's a way he was walking. He owned the space. It's a conversation that I had with God. Same last week. And you know how sometimes you want to be a baby before God? Oh, you know, things are hard, things are not working. You know what I mean? And God told me, this is your consolation. You're going to stand up and lead. I'm like, huh?
Why are you crying?
Essentially.
This stick of leadership you have.
I understood holiness. He was simply telling me that if you show up in my presence, inaccurate to the position you hold, you're being unholy. You see, you and your son can't cry to God the same. You see, your son, if he's out there, he's away from his parents, he loses his pocket money, for example. His panic for not having money that day should not be the same as your panic for not having money that day.
Definitely.
If you listened to hers, you put no pocket money. So this Jew, Bakula, dedication, because Abu, guys will be like, here's what's wrong with you. The expectation of God, when he says, be holy as I am holy, his expectation is that you remember you are set apart, chosen, for a purpose. That purpose is to be done with distinction. Right? When it is done with distinction, then you're holy. You get? And the best part about being a vessel is that the person who uses the vessel cleans it.
Yes.
Person who uses the vessel cleans it. Too many vessels are like, oh, but I'm not worthy, I'm not ready, I'm not. The thing you can do, the thing you are called to do, unaweza cheza guitar, play it with distinction. Do it in such a way that you are set apart. Then you will not have this secular gospel conversation, because you will be driving and it will be holy driving. You will be riding, it's holy riding. You will be dressing, it's holy dressing. You'll be teaching, you'll be being a mother, a father, a husband, a wife, and it will be holy. Because you will choose to do it as a set apart people for his purpose and will. Maliza.
There being no other business.
Hakuna maswali?
Leo, acha nikwambie. Unajua ile siku unakuwa umenyorosha watu. watu wanakuangalia hivi 18.
Yeah.
There's only one comment I can see. Unless nyinyi mnaona kitu kingine. Jerry Kariuki amesema the unclean is me. I think she summarizes how watu wamesikia hiyo kitu. Kuna mtu ameongeza kitu?
Profound, and then says, I will listen.
Yes, please re-listen. I've made it, but this is the simplest I would have made this teaching, and shortest.
That was simple. Simple. Safi.
Thanks, Titus.
See you guys. Be holy. Hiyo tu ndio nitasema.
As the Lord your God is holy.
Yes. Asante sana.